All right, so picking up from last time, we're going to put some of this into practice with a few examples. So I've got my list of things I want to try here, and then I have another Blender scene where I'll actually do it. So what's the first one? Okay, delete a collection that has objects in it. What's going to happen? So let's do that, okay? We've got a collection here with objects in it. And this you've probably run into many times and wondered, like, what the hell? Which is you have your collection like this, and you're like, okay, I want to delete this collection. And what you think that means is I want to delete the collection and everything in it. But the collection is a data block, right? The collection is not the parent, owner, manager, or anything of these other data blocks. Think of it much more like a tagging system, okay, than a hierarchy. So what's going to happen when I delete this collection is nothing to the objects inside it because I haven't deleted them. I've deleted the collection data blocks. Let's do that. What happens? Oh, they're right there. They just pop out of the collection. And by pop out, the behavior is they will always move to the next collection higher in the hierarchy, in the user hierarchy, okay? So we'll use our terms here. We'll actually do this one level deeper to kind of drive the point home, okay? So here I have the scene itself is a user of collection 1, or I'm sorry, of collection, and collection is a user of collection 1, and we're going to put these in here, and a collection 1 is user of all these objects. If I delete collection 1, its user, right, meaning collection, its user will inherit its contents, all right? So if I delete it, what happens? It pops up a level, okay? And if I delete this, the same thing, it's going to pop up a level. Like we talked in the last video, there is no such thing as deleting this scene collection. This is a special one, all right? So these will always have membership in a collection, okay? That's how that works. That's what happens, and why you've seen that probably many times happen. If you want to delete, let's just make another, too many undos. Okay, if you want to do the behavior where you were thinking before, hey, I want to delete this and everything in it, what you're really saying is, I'd like to delete this collection data block and anything that it is a user of. Okay, that's the way to think about that. And you can do that if you right-click and you say delete hierarchy. It's going to delete this data block and anything that it is a user of. All right, that's what you would kind of expect to happen, and that indeed is what happens. Okay, that's what happens there and what's really going on under the hood. Next one. What happens if we delete an object that is linked to several collections? All right, so this gets a little more interesting. Let's come back here. I'm just going to make a new scene each time to keep this totally straightforward. Okay, so we got this. Let's make a few collections in here, maybe 3. Okay. All right, each of collection. Each of these is its own data block, as discussed, right? Okay, collection is a user right now of cube. Okay, but what I can do is with a menu, I can link cube, right, to these other collections. So I'm going to do that. I'm going to say the shortcut for this is Shift M, but it's also in the menus. Link to collection 2, and then link to collection 3. Now this gets a little bit confusing because you look at this and like, well, I have 3 cubes in my scene. You don't. You have 3 links, you have 3 users of cube, but cube is its own thing. This is not coplanar geometry. There's not 3 cubes. There's 1 cube that has 3 users that are these collections, all right? If this gets confusing to you, well, first, like, why might you want to do this? Well, when we get to things like instancing, with geometry nodes, there's such a thing as instancing collections. So it's possible I could have a setup where I want to instance just the cube, but then I want to instance the cube and several other things together as one instance, but I can reuse the same cube to do that, so I can set it up all these different ways. Or with rendering, there might be scenarios where I want the cube to behave in a certain way based on a collection to be, say, a shadow catcher or a holdout, but I want it actively live in another one. It's the same object, but I want to treat it in rendering different ways with these flags. That's why it happens. And I'm going to make more sense when we get to scenes, okay? But that's what's going on. So you'll notice when I highlight all of these, all of them highlight. If I change the name to my cube, all of them change because this is the same object, okay? And it's just one object. So now what happens if, per our previous thing we were talking about, or sorry, the last video we were talking about, what happens if I delete this? Well, by deleting it, I'm not doing anything to the collections. I am removing this data block from the Blender file. So if I do it, it's gone in all 3. It's not gone in collection 3, it's gone in all of them, right? Because the data block, the object, is gone, okay? Let's undo that. What if I just organizationally, I want my cube in my scene, but I do not want it as a member of collection 3? Well, and that's where we use unlink. So if I highlight cube or my cube here, its current user, the one that's relevant here, is collection 3, all right, because this is the one I have highlighted. If I now right-click and I say unlink, nothing bad happens. My cube is still here. There aren't 2 copies of it, just the one, but there's 2 users of it, these 2 collections, okay? And we can work that way, okay? That's important to know. Incidentally, and I think a lot of you will like this, it can be very confusing, especially when we get into like parenting relationships, okay? To look at your scene this way. Collections are wonderful and they're useful for a lot of stuff, but stuff can get to be really like a headache to understand what's going on. And I'll make it so here. I'm going to have another collection where I make a, let's make a UV sphere. Okay, we'll make it a little bigger. Okay, and I'm going to make the UV sphere the parent. Okay, or I'm sorry, I'm going to make the cube the parent of the UV sphere. All right, we're going to parent it. And then I'm going to make another collection. Okay, here, we're going to make this super complicated. All right, which is an axis. All right, and we'll make it big so we can see it. And we're going to make the cube, I'm sorry, the axis the parent of the cube. Okay, and you've all seen this before too. So that's a pretty simple setup, right? But stuff gets really weird in the outliner view. So like I look in, okay, this empty is being used by collection 5, so it's displayed in collection 5. And I come down here and I see this stuff grayed out. Well, what the hell is that? Well, the outliner is trying to show me the parenting relationship, but it's grayed out because my cube, I'm sorry, because collection 5 is not a user of my cube, but it still wants to show me that there's like a relationship here. But you get into a scenario where things become very complicated. Like, for instance, where is my sphere really? You know, like it's here somewhere. Oh, here it is. It's in collection 4. That's really where the sphere is. And if I highlight it, you see it highlights everywhere, right? I could delete it from everywhere. Any one of these I can delete, it'll go away. But I'm seeing my sphere like 10 times in this view, and it's very confusing as to what's going on. So if you have a scene like this, or maybe any scene, you always have the option to view this a different way. If you come up here to the outliner, and you change this, instead of view layer, which is the default, if you change this to scenes, it's going to show all of the objects regardless of their collection users. All right, so my scene is laid out here. Here's the view layers. And if I double click on a view layer, I'll go immediately to its properties. That's cool. Same thing with the world. I'll go to its properties. Okay, it shows me that I have all of these collections in the scene, meaning the scene is a user of all of these collection data blocks, but it doesn't display the objects in them. Instead, what it does is give me an object hierarchy. Okay, and this looks much more like any other software. And you can work the whole time in Blender this way. You don't have to use the view layers. You could look at your whole scene this way and work the whole time here. Double clicking still works, right? You can still delete stuff in here, right? You can do all of that. And that's much more kind of straightforward to understand the parenting structure of these data blocks with each other when your collections get a little bit nuts, which in some scenes they do. So a lot of you might really like that. Again, it's all, you double click, you get the properties. It all works the same way. You can rename stuff. Just a different way to look at the same thing, okay? That can be really useful. Okay, what's our next one? Let's go here. Unlink an object that is linked to several collections we already did. Link a mesh to more than one object. Instancing, yes. Okay, so let's come here. We'll make a new scene. And let's say we have, let's just do this, okay. All right, we have our cube here. And the cube is, this cube object data block is a user of this mesh data block, also called cube. I'm going to call this my mesh, so that it's, you know, and this is going to be my object, okay. So what can we do with this? Well, if I hold Shift-D to duplicate, just a straight duplicate of this cube, okay? I'm going to get a bunch of these. Well, what does a straight duplicate command do? Well, it's making a bunch of new object data blocks. Each one of these is now a data block. And also, it is making a new data block, or a new mesh data block for each one of those, okay? This mesh has a .001 because no data block in Blender can be of the same type. So like a mesh data block has to be uniquely named. If I try to name this one of these other names, it won't work, or it'll make one of these names different, all right? Because it cannot have the same name. So each of these are unique data blocks, right? So you mentioned this is a cube, but if this were a tree with 200,000 polygons in it, that would be a lot of waste, right? Because we've got 200,000, like all this data being written to the file would be a crazy amount for Blender to, or any software to handle, okay? Well, that's instancing. That's why we do instancing. In fact, I can show this to you a little different way. If we come over this menu here and show statistics, you can see right now, as far as the GPU is concerned, okay, as far as memory is concerned, this scene has 60 faces because each of these cubes has 6 faces, right? So we have 60 faces here in this scene, okay? What I can do instead is remove, or let me say it a different way. I can make all of these object data blocks users of this data block rather than all of these unique ones. To do that in Blender, I highlight all of these things, and then I'm going to control-click in the outliner, or I can shift-click in the viewport, same thing. So I get an active object there, okay? And then if I hover over the viewport and I do Control-L as the link menu, which makes sense now that we know what linking is, okay? And I'm going to say link object data. It says object data because it doesn't want to make a separate menu entry for camera or light or mesh or whatever, but it all means the green stuff, right? So in this case, it means mesh. So if I say link object data, watch now if faces when I do this, okay? Faces 60, I'm going to link object data, faces 12. Okay, I must have still one more duplicate somewhere. Oh, I think it was this one. Hold on. Ha, we're going to fix that too. I'm going to highlight all of these again. I'm going to control-click that one. I'm going to link object data. There we go, 6. Because all of these now, in terms of memory, this mesh being displayed here is the same mesh every time. And under the hood, that makes the scene way, way, way more efficient. Now we're only seeing 6 faces rather than 60. It also means that conveniently I can change the look of this cube on any one of these. So this is important again. There are no special relationships, okay? There's nothing special about this cube object because it was the first to be linked to this mesh. It does not matter. These are all co-equal with each other now. If I delete this first object, fine, doesn't matter at all. I could take any one of these anywhere, go into edit mode, and what I've told Blender is, okay, look at the object data, the mesh data that is being used by this object, and I'd like to edit that. I can do that from any one of these, and it will work exactly the same way because it's calling on exactly the same data block. So if I come in here and I grab some points, let's say, and I move them up, all right? Right? This is changing these everywhere, okay? And this is what we call instancing, all right? And this is why we do it, because it can be really, really powerful if these aren't, you know, 6 poly cubes, but are a million poly, you know, asset that we want a million of or 100,000 of or something. This is how you pull that off, okay? That's instancing, and that's why it works. Let's say, for example, that I would like to take one of these and make it no longer an instance. Like, no, this one needs to be special, okay? Well, I can do that too. So if I come here to this object, and I'm going to go to its mesh data block here, okay? I can pick any other mesh that's in the Blender file from here. Okay, I can pick any one that I like and replace this with that from this menu. All right, but what I want to do is make a new one that I want to manipulate separately. That's where this icon comes in handy. So if we look over here, this says display the number of users of this data. Well, there's 9 because I have currently 9 of these objects, all that are using my mesh. I'm going to rename it my silly mesh. Okay? They all get renamed. It's the same thing. Okay? So if I want to make one to work on that's unique, what I'm going to do is go to this mesh menu. And if I hover over this button, it also says click to make a single user copy. So I'm going to click. And you'll notice, hey, this number changed. Okay? All right, that's fine. What that means is, and you'll see that thing went away. If you don't see a badge here or a block here with a number, that means there's only one user in the file of this piece of data. So I'm going to call this my silly, you know, unique mesh, let's say, okay? And now when I go to edit, if I invoke the edit command, Blender is saying, which data block are we editing? Oh, it's the one that you're using, which is my silly unique mesh. I'm going to pull this down, right? Or do whatever I want. Maybe maybe we'll do a, some of this and all the good stuff, okay? It only affects this one because all of these other ones are are users of that other mesh. I can make any of these use that too. So I really like this, and I think some of my trees in my forest should be that, okay? I can highlight all these, shift highlight this one, and same thing, Control L, link object data. Now they're all that, okay? Or I was like, nah, these two, I changed my mind. These two should be this, really. Control L, link object data. Now they're that again, right? And any one of these, if I edit, right, you get the idea here, all right? They're all tied that way, okay? Very, very powerful concept because it means we can reuse this stuff for hundreds of thousands of objects the same way, okay? That's that one. Let's go to the next one. Okay, is that behavior of instancing unique to only the mesh data block type? No, it can be done with many other things. How about lights? Let's look at an example with lights. So we'll use the same collection here. We'll make a new collection. We'll call this lights. And in here we will make a light. Oh, I'm going to highlight this. We're going to make a light, point light, and we're going to pull it up a little bit. I'm also going to make just a ground plane so we can see some light here. Let's see here. Okay, bear with me. All right, fine. Easy enough. Got a point light here. Let's go to our rendered view. Here we go. Come on. There we go. Okay. And I'm a snob, so we're going to go cycles too. Give me a moment. Here we go. There we are. Great. Got a point light. I'm going to change this light to a spotlight, just a little easier to understand what's going on. And we're going to... Oh, we have another light. The reason this is weird is there's another light in my scene. I get rid of that one. Okay, here we go. Spotlight. Here we go. And I'm going to make this, 100 watts, let's say. Whatever. We'll make it something. Okay, we've got our spotlight. Okay, so I can do, like normally, I could do Shift-D to regular duplicate this light, right? And then maybe constrain it. Okay, maybe I could take both of these, all right? And I'm going to do Shift-D, and I'm going to hold down Shift-Z so they can't move in Z-space. Now I'm going to grab all 4 of them, or let's say 3 of them. Shift-D, and I'm going to, again, constrain them in Z-space. We're going to make like a, so I don't know what we're making. Something like that, okay? Now by doing, again, Shift-D to do a regular duplicate, I've done exactly what I've done with the objects, only with lights now. So if I open these up, okay, here's my light data block, and each one of these is unique. So if I want to make this one way more powerful, okay, and I want to change its spread, okay, and I want to do whatever I want to do, I can do that. And likewise, you get the idea. I'll make this one red, whatever, and so on and so on. That's all fine. And in fact, we're gonna do a little something here. So let's say I'll make this one crazy red. All right, like really, really intense red. I'm gonna call because I'm manipulating this light data block. I'm gonna call this red light. Okay, red light. And I'm going to protect it with this shield so that even if I no longer use this red light, it's always available to me in the blend file because maybe I'm playing with lights and I want to try some things out. So I'm going to protect it. This other light here, how about this one? I'm going to call this white light. Okay, and again, I'm going to protect it, all right? Okay, great. So now what I can do really easily is say, hey, I want to grab all of these lights. All right, so I'm going to highlight them all, and then I'm going to shift collect the one that I want. So I'm going to shift collect the object that has white light or the object that is the user of white light. Okay, I'm going to do Control L just like we did with instancing meshes and say link object data. Now they're all that light. Okay, so if I move this around, if I change anything about the light, if I change its color, okay, they all behave together. If I change its wattage, the same thing. How about its radius? I can make it softer. I can do whatever. But I can still animate these independently because the object data block is what carries the position and animation, right? So I can, I can move these around and do stuff independently. But you think about if you were thinking about in the real life, like the light bulb that's in each one of these, okay, is exactly the same. And I could take all of them now. So right now, all of these lights use what I'm calling white light. Let's make it white again to not blow our minds here, okay? All of them are using white lights. I don't have that red light anywhere currently in my scene, but I protected it, okay? It's in the blend file. Incidentally, you can see in the blend file if you have any orphans. We talked about orphans. You can see that as well. There's a view for that in the outliner. If you come up here and you come and look at orphan data, okay, this will give you a list sorted by data block type, okay, data block type of all the things that are currently orphans in your scene. So I'm going to open lights here and have a look at what's going on. So all of these lights, okay, these light data blocks, okay, they're orphans because I deleted, I either deleted the object that was the single user in the case of this light, so it became an orphan, or with these other ones, I didn't delete the object, but I changed them to use white light instead of what they were currently using. And when I did that, 0.1, 0.2, 0.3, everyone that was created when we did the original duplication is now an orphan. And you can see a couple things about that orphan over here. Over here, this number is how many users does this have? Well, 0 because it's an orphan. Okay, the shield icon, this is exactly the same as this, okay? The shield icon means I could look here and say, oh my God, I didn't mean to do that. I want to protect these two, or these 100, or whatever. I can set the protective status, the fake user, on anything from this view really easily if I want to do that, okay? If I don't do that, and I save this file and reopen it, these will be gone forever, okay? And you can see, when I do that, it changes the user to 1, which is what a fake user is. All right, I'm going to take that off. So now I can see down here, I have red light. Well, I removed its usage from this whole scene, but because I clicked this shield icon, you can see it reflected here. It still has 1 user. This red light will always be around for me until I decide to get rid of it and take that shield off, okay? This data block is protected. It has a fake user. Let's go back to our scene. So what happens now, because I don't have direct access to that, like I don't have a light that has that red light on it, okay? What if I wanted to make some of these red? Well, I could highlight them. Well, let's do it to 1 first. So I could take this object, come down, double click on here to get the object data properties, okay? And here's a menu to choose what data block should I link. I can click here and choose red light. If I have thousands of these, I can also search, by the way, red light. You see the F here? The F means fake user. It's shorthand for that this is a protected light. So I'm going to click on that. Now that's a red light, okay? And then it's very easy. I could do that with each of these individually. Or again, I could say I want these ones here. Shift click on this one so that it's the active object. And then Control L and link object data. Oh, hold on. Grab, oh, hold on. I could grab all of these here, okay? And then Shift select the one that I want. And I could say Control L, link object data, and then all of those become that red light, okay? And again, like anything, any parameter of this light, I can control, I can whatever. This can be super powerful if you have a scenario, let's say street lamps, where you have hundreds of these, being able to control them all without like drivers or out having to, make some crazy setup to control them all as a group. This is how you do it. They're all using just the same light data block, okay? It's instancing, but for lights, and it works exactly the same way as instancing for objects. All right, that's that one. Let's keep going. Okay, can this be done with actions? Okay, actions are also a data block. Absolutely. So let's come here, and maybe we'll just continue on with our scene here, and we'll make some, maybe we'll try and make some swinging lights, okay? So let's say, let's get this guy, and we'll just pull him down here a little bit. And we're going to make an action for him, so we're going to, let's go to the view here, and we're going to rotate him like this, and do a keyframe. I'm only going to do a keyframe on rotation, and then we'll come to 20, and we'll rotate him back. Rotation, and then we'll do another keyframe at 40, okay? And we'll rotate him back here, and we'll do a keyframe, okay? Right there, okay? So if we've done this right, he's going to swing back and forth, okay? Great. What if I want them all to dance the same way like that, like it's a concert, or a level in Super Mario or something where lights do crazy things. Okay, well, let's look at what's happening. When I create animation in Blender, I'm actually writing that animation to an action data block. All animation in Blender gets written to action data blocks. And you can see that here if I twirl down in point light. Once I've animated it, I have a new category in here, animation. And I pull that down and you can see here, point 3 action. Okay, this is a data block. This is where the animation is kept. But because it's a data block, it doesn't belong necessarily to 0.03. It's just a set of instructions about what to do. So I'm going to call this data block swinging. Okay? Now, how do we see this data block? How do we use it and how do we see it? Well, there's a view for that. If we come here and we drag up a new window, and we're going to change this to the dope sheet, okay, there's a mode in the dope sheet that's specific to looking at actions rather than contextualizing the animation in a sort of object hierarchy, okay? You can actually see here what's going on. It's saying, hey, what's going on in my scene? Well, I have this object. This object is a user of this action. And this action, okay, what's in this action? Well, this action is instructions for rotation. The only channels that this action is acting on are the rotation channels because that's all that we've keyframed, right? Okay? So if I now, yeah, here we go. Sorry, if I come to this this menu here, so I'm in, this gets confusing. I'm in the dope sheet, okay? And I come over to this submenu and I choose Action Editor. Hey, here's swinging right here, all right? I'm editing the action called swinging. This menu, just like all the other menus, says browse the action. What that means is browse the action data block, okay, that I'd like to link to this current user. The current user over here, right, is going to be the 0.3 object, okay? So I can do all of that or whatever. I can also rename it here. I can call this swinging light or light, okay? And here you can see that that's updated. These are the same thing, okay? That's the swinging light. Okay, well, what if I wanted to make this light swing, okay? Well, if I highlight this light, I can choose an action to be applied to it. So I can come to this menu. Swinging lights exists in the Blender file in the database as an action. It's not specific to that point light, okay? It's not like calling for a parameter with a driver. It's just its own thing. And its own thing, by the way, let's reinforce this. You'll notice nowhere in here does it say anything about point light 1. All it says is these channel names. So you can think about it as like, oh, okay, if I apply this action to something else, if it also has a channel called X Euler rotation, then it's going to use that action to drive that channel. If it doesn't have a channel in this action, it's not going to do anything to it, okay? So let's come over this in practice and we'll grab swinging lights, okay? You see, now they swing together. Now, their locations are still separated. Why? Because the action is not keying any of the channels to do with rotation. It's only keying channels to do with rotation. So I can separate these things and do clever stuff, right? I could do that with this one too. Let's just try it. Okay, you get the idea. Come here, okay? Now all of these, okay, are sharing the same action, which means on any one of them, if I were to modify this action, it's going to apply to all of them because they're all using it, all right? So if I say, I want to make this, this swing back way longer, okay? I can come here and do that. All right, and it's going to do it to all of them. They're all in sync just for those channels. So it's a very unique way to use this stuff without having to rely on drivers or whatever. You can also iterate really well with it. Let's undo that, okay? Let's say, for example, that, hey, I want to see what all these lights would look like if they were swinging a little different, but I might come back to this, right? So now what I can do is name this swinging lights option 1. Okay, that's this data block. You can see here, by the way, now it has 4 users because I'm using it on 4 of these lights. I'm going to also protect this right here, protect, fake user, okay? So, and now I'm going to say, you know what? By clicking on one of these, okay, or actually I'm going to, let's do this instead. I'm going to make a new action, okay? Now this option 1.001, so this is a new, it's got a new name, it is a new data block, okay? I'm going to make this option 2, okay? And then, I don't know, we'll do the thing where we're stretching out, we're stretching things out a little bit here. I don't know what we're doing, something like this, some slower thing, okay? Okay, so that's the slower one. Now you can see the other ones are not currently using that, right? Only this one is, because I got to tell these other ones to do it. And I don't want to do a tutorial here. There might be a way to batch this. I'm not sure. Let's see. Whoops. This is actually me finding out with you. There's probably a way to do this. But if I say I'd like that to be swinging lights option 2, it just does one. There's probably a way to do this all at the same time. I don't know what it is. Okay, but what I'm doing here is going through, highlighting each one of these, and then choosing from the menu now which option I want. So all of these are option 2. Okay, great. If I want some of them to be option 1 and some of them to be option 2, that's fine too. I can just select what I want here. Okay, no, you should be option 1. You should go faster. Okay, right? They're independent. The animation is independent of the object that it's acting on. And it's all based on the names of these channels. This is how animating a character works also. Because when you animate a character, you're creating an action for that animation. And it knows, oh, there's a thing called bone, or this thing called, let's say, root bone. And that thing called in root bone has location. And so it's listing all of those channels and then putting keys on those, which means you can reuse the actions among many, many different characters if their bones are named the same. You can absolutely reuse them. You can append or link these action data blocks into other files, which becomes very, very powerful for animating. Okay, same idea, one-to-many relationship. Okay, let's keep moving. I'm getting a little wordy. I apologize. All right. All right, what happens, this is a special situation, when we delete a mesh, okay? I want to show you this. So if I come to, let's make a new file here. Okay. Don't save, live on the edge, okay. All right, so I have here, I'm going to rename this again. I'm my mesh. There we go, okay. So we know that these are separate data blocks, okay? But there's a special behavior when you delete the mesh data block versus the object data block, right? When you delete the object data block, we've kind of seen that, we know what happens. But the mesh one, so there's a way to do this. Let's go actually to our Blender file view again so that we can sort these things by type. And so I'm going to come to meshes, and there's my mesh. My mesh is the only mesh data block in the scene. If I delete my mesh from here, it's going to delete the object that is using it as well, because an object must have an object data, it must be the user of an object data block. If it is not, it doesn't hang around in the file, it gets deleted automatically. So if I delete my mesh, it also deletes the cube object, because the cube object is invalid without being linked to a mesh data block. That's the way to think about that. So just another little wrinkle. That's kind of a special situation with objects, okay? What else can I, let's see here. Okay, create a linked scene. All right, so this is where we're getting to kind of why we started all this, is we want to get into using scenes for things like rendering. So let's make a new scene, or I'm sorry, a new file again. Use my words. Okay, here we go. So in this file, I'm going to make a collection. I'm going to call this camera, okay, and I'm going to call this lights, all right, and I'm going to call this objects, all right, and I'm going to move the light in here and the object in here. Okay, so we have a very basic scene. Maybe in objects we've got, let's make a few more so we let's see what's going on here. Oh, not circle. Let's go. Let's go make a UV sphere. All right. Put it over here, and we'll make. Bear with me. We'll make like a cylinder. Great, doesn't matter. Okay, got some stuff in our scene. Okay, objects. Okay, so up here, this is my scene name. Okay. I'm going to change this. I'm going to call this something more descriptive, like you know, scene 01. Very descriptive, right? Okay. That's fine. So I have scene 01 here, and it consists. Let's say it in the language that we've learned. Scene 01 is a user of the camera, lights, and objects collection data blocks, okay? And those data blocks are in turn users of these objects, okay? That's the way to speak about it correctly. So what is a scene? Well, we talked a little bit about scene parameters previously. And again, it's these top 4 white icons. These are all the things that are relevant to the scene. So let's say render properties. Right now we're rendering an Eevee. okay? And we have a frame range. That's a thing we can do. Let's say a frame range of 24, okay? And a resolution, and we have some view layers and stuff we can do there, okay? That's our scene, okay? Let's make a new scene now. And the way you do that is you come over, there's this menu here, okay? And you have options. The one we're interested in is linked copy, okay? If I say new, a new scene means, let me put it in our terms. A new scene means create a new scene that is not a user of any collections, okay? Which has the effect of making it blank, okay? It's got nothing in there because we're not a user of any collections that have anything in them, all right? So I'm gonna call this new scene just as an example, okay? But this scene comes with all of these parameters, and also it's a user of the world. Let's actually look at the world for a moment. If we come to our shading here and we go to world, we can look at, world here, okay? And look at this. The world has two users. Who are the users of the world? The scenes. We can share that world data block between the scenes, or we could click this button to make it unique, okay? All right, so let's come back to, we'll go back to our layout. That's what new scene means. Let's go back to our scene 01. New scene, not super useful. I mean, I'm sure there's use for it, but not what we're after. If we want to control things for rendering and layers, what we want is a linked scene. So I'm going to come to this this button right here, and I'm going to say linked copy. And what that's saying in our language is make a new scene that is also a user of all of the collections that this scene is using. So I click that. It seems like nothing happened, but it did. I've got a new scene here, okay? I'm going to call this scene 02 linked so we can keep track of what's going on, okay? All right, so what happened under the hood is objects, this is the same collection, okay? The collection data block that's in this scene, okay? Scene 1, scene 2. It's not a relative reference. It's not an instance. It's literally the same thing, okay? There's no overhead in RAM. We haven't duplicated data. All we've done is make a scene and said, you are the user of camera, lights, and objects collection. That's it, okay? But that allows us to manipulate a lot of stuff separately. So it's exactly my same scene. If I move cube here, I'm going to move it in scene 2 linked. If I go back to scene 1, okay, it's the same thing. It's been moved. Why? Because cube is its own data block, right? Cube exists wherever cube exists, all right? Doesn't matter what scene. If I go back to scene 2, this is a sort of rehash from before. If I'm in scene 2 and I delete cube, we know that that means delete it from the Blender file, which means it's also deleted from scene 1. Even though scene 1 is an entirely different scene, it's still gone because the cube itself, that data block, was removed everywhere that used it, okay? This is the concept. So let's come back to scene, come back to scene 2, scene 1, okay? So in scene 2, what I can change is all of this stuff that are properties of the scene data block. So if I come to render, okay, this one's going to be cycles, okay? And I can change all my normal cycle stuff and whatever, okay, all that kind of good stuff. So now I have a scene, or I have my same same content, okay, in both scenes, but one is now an Eevee render and one is a cycles render, okay? Likewise, I can say, okay, I want a different file output here. I want this to be, cycles dot, I want to set something up like that, and I want this one to be a, open layer EXR and half and all that stuff. And then my other one, let's say I'm going to go back to scene 1. Okay, now I want this to be called Eevee, whatever, and I want that one to be a PNG, okay? Those things are separated because they're properties of the scene, okay? As is frame rate, as is resolution, okay? As is what camera is used to render. All of this stuff that you might want access to, okay? And then they also have view layers, which you're probably familiar with already, but each scene has its own set of view layers. Those don't have to be shared, right? This view layer belongs to scene 2. This is how we can get stuff to render, or where we have a lot of control. So let me build this scenario out just a little bit. Let's come back to our scene 1 here. And let's say, for example, that we are going to rearrange some things here. In scene 1, I want a collection, and I want sphere to be in this collection here, and we're going to call this, sphere collection, okay? So I've done some changes to scene 1. Will those changes automatically apply to scene 2? No. So if I come to scene 2, there's no such thing as a collection called sphere collection, or whatever we called that, right? Because I created, when I did this, I created a new a new collection data block. I created it, and because I created it in scene 1, it's like, oh, okay, you'd like scene 1 to be a user of this data block, and I see that this data block contains sphere. Let's make a couple more objects in here, okay? Let's make a cone, all right? Same thing, I'm not going to see sphere or cone in the other one because that scene is not a user of this collection. Let's go to scene 2. Oh, yep, not there. Let's go to scene 1. Okay, well, what if I did want these things to be in scene 2? There's several things that we could do. One is if I were to take this and put it in a collection that is used by the other scene. Okay, let's put cone in there. I have to do nothing else. I come here, my cone is here. Why? Because this collection is being used by this scene, and now this cone is being used by this collection. That's one way to do it. Okay, let's come back. What if I've created some new collections here, and I would like the collection. I want this organizationally. I want the collection to be in the other scene, not just the objects. Well, I can do that too. That's a little harder, but not hard. Okay. So if I want to do that, what I want to say in our language that we've developed is I'd like scene 2 to be a user of this collection. So let's come back to up here in the outliner, our scenes view, where we have all of this laid out now. Okay. And what we can say is, all right, in scene 1, I have this thing called sphere collection. I want that to be in scene 2. Well, how I accomplish that is I click on scene 2, and then I right click on the collection I'd like, and I say link to scene. All right. There we go. Now it's going to be in my scene here. Okay. It will put it under, or I'm sorry, it will put it, yeah. It will put it into, if you will, or make a user of whatever collection is highlighted, but it's in my scene. So if I go back to scene 2 viewed as view layers, you'll see it actually nested it in objects. And the reason it did that was because I had this selected in this view when I did that command, but it doesn't matter. It's in the scene. I can drag this out into the scene collection, no problem, because these two are not dependent on each other, right? It's just another scene. So now that I've done that, now I have this new content that I wanted in both of these places, right? And I can make more. I can say make a, I don't know, make a, let's just make something else. Make a plane, okay? I make that plane. That's all going to come across just fine. Let's say the opposite. Let's say that this sphere collection is really a bunch of background stuff that I want to render separately from the foreground, okay? For example, let's call this now background stuff, okay? And this one is foreground. Again, just to drive the point home, I've renamed these collections, which are their own data blocks. So if I come back to scene 1, hey, they're also called that. They're exactly the same. Okay, so let's come to scene 2. And it might be tempting to say like, okay, well in this scene, I don't want to render, I don't even want to look at any of this background stuff. I want to reduce my clutter here. So I'm going to delete this background stuff. And this is kind of a callback to earlier. If we delete that, one, we don't delete the stuff inside of it, right? But more importantly, when we've deleted that from here, again, we've deleted the data block from the file. So if we come back to scene 1, hey, guess what? That's gone too. You've deleted it everywhere. It doesn't matter what scene you're looking at, it's gone, okay? We don't want to do that, all right? What do we want to do? Let's come here. Let's undo. So we're in our scene 2. This is actually I'm going to call this now, this is our background scene, all right? Okay, cool. What I can do instead is right-click on this collection, okay? And I can say unlink. And as we learned in that first video, what's unlink? Unlink is remove this from the current user that we're talking about. So in this case, because I'm in scene 2, or I'm sorry, I'm in a scene called background, okay? Background, the user we're talking about here is the scene called background. And by unlinking it, I'm removing background as a user of the background stuff collection. I do that and it's gone. Now it's not gone from the database, and it's not gone from my, what I'm going to call my foreground scene. Okay, I'll call this foreground. Still there. It just removed the scene as a user of the collection. So I'm going to do the same in foreground, or actually I did this backwards, but you get the idea. Okay. I have just foreground here. Okay. And I have, I've named these backwards, but that's fine. So in this, I'll get rid of this foreground stuff the same way. And when I say get rid of, I'm going to unlink this from this scene. Okay, so now I have a scene. They're actually named totally wrong. I'm going to rename them now. Hopefully that's not too confusing. Sorry. I'm going to call this background 01, and I'm going to go to background, which is now foreground. There we go. All right, so now this makes sense. But hopefully the concept is clear, even though I kind of screwed that part up a little bit. Okay, there we go. So I've got a scene called background. It's a user of background stuff collection. Okay, my scene foreground, okay, is this. So totally different content, totally different render settings. Okay, you can have totally different frame range, resolutions. You can call for different cameras. You can set these things up totally differently, but they're the same thing. Okay, and a lot of times what I'll do actually is make one of these scenes something called edit. So let's actually set this up again. We'll make this less confusing. If I come to general here. Okay, we're good. So let's just make a couple collections like we did again, and we'll have camera, and we'll have cube, and we'll have light. Okay, just what we did last time. It's going to be cam, objects. Let's call it objects 1, and this is lights, okay? And this is going to be objects 2. And in objects 2, we're going to have a single object. We're going to make a UV sphere. Grow it a little bit so we can see it, move it over here. Okay. So this is like, this is me designing my scene before I get to the stage of wanting to render or whatever. What I do in practice is I'm going to call this scene here, I'm going to call this edit, okay? Which is, I have access to everything. I can see all of this stuff. Because a lot of times relationally, you want to, how's it play with everything else, okay? I call this edit. And then when it comes time to render, then I will do the thing where I make a new linked scene, okay, like a new linked copy. And let's call this, okay, this is going to be objects, objects 1, okay, or objects 1, okay. All right, that's cool. And so I'm in the objects 1 scene, and for purposes of getting this kicked out and dealt with, okay, well, I want the camera, right, shared by both. I want objects, I want lights. I don't want objects 2. So I'm going to come right-click. I'm going to say unlink. Okay, now this scene is very clean, and it just deals with objects 1. Okay, I'm going to come back to my edit. I'm going to make a new linked copy. This one's going to be called objects 2. Okay, and fine. And in objects 2, I want to unlink objects 1. Okay, and now I have my shared lights and camera, so I can move, I can play with the camera. Like if I go into, just like any scene, if I go into my camera here, and I change the view like this, okay, let's come like way out here, all right. That camera is its own data block, and it's shared. It has 2 users. So if I come to scene 1 now, or I'm sorry, if I go to scene objects 1, yep, same camera, same lights, same stuff, just different stuff that I'm dealing with. And if I want to see how the sphere and the cube relate to each other, I come back to my edit scene where I'm actually like making all my stuff, and I move it, and I like it like that, whatever, no problem. When I come back to render or to kick the stuff out, I still have object 1, I still have object 2, and so on. Okay. That's how I use this in practice, and how it can be hugely valuable. It also means that I could set up things to interact with my scene separately. So let's say, okay, in my objects 2 scene, I'd really like this to be on like a backdrop. I don't know, let's say we're doing a product thing or something. Whoop. Plane, there we go. All right, so I can make a thing here, and I'm making it in the objects 2 thing because I know that's linked to the scene. I'm going to grab this and, whoops, sorry, wrong button. Easy, there we go. And then I'm going to do this, and I'm going to bevel it. All right, and I'm going to make a backdrop here like this. Okay, and shade smooth. Okay, so now I'm doing that, fine. But I don't want to do this in scene or in the other objects render. Okay, I didn't. It's not there, right? Okay. It will be there in edit because I've added it to a scene that is used by, or I'm sorry, I've added it to a collection that is used by the edit scene, okay? This is how this all goes, all right? Let's see, I think that's the last example. Yes, it is. So, okay, in the next video, we're going to do a practical example with a kitchen as like a demonstration of what this might look like in practice and some of the things that you can do now that you know this stuff. So we'll see you in the next one.